Welcome, everybody. This is episode 5 of the Ed Wood Podcast Summit. Episode 5. So today I had a couple things that I was thinking about talking about earlier today. And then I got a package in the mail that I had been waiting for that was due a couple of weeks ago. It took forever to get here, something I ordered literally like 6 weeks ago. And I decided that it would make a nice follow-on from last week's episode where we talked about Dr. T.K. Peters, the Sociosexual Paperbacks that Ed Wood was involved in that often carried Dr. Peters' name on the title. We talked about Dr. Peters' background. So if you haven't seen that, I definitely, and you want to learn a little bit more about Dr. T.K. Peters, I'm definitely going to refer you back to last week's video because at some length early on, the first half or so of the video, I went into a pretty um, reasonably detailed biographical overview of Dr. Peters, things that generally are not well known. So yes, obviously the book that came in the mail today is a Dr. Peters title. So was waiting for it eagerly. And once again, despite the fact that this is the Ed Wood Summit podcast, this isn't an Ed Wood book, right? Well, or is it? Could there be elements within the book that may have been written by Ed Wood? Hard to say. We're going to look at it. I'm not going to certainly make any definitive conclusions of that sort. What I can definitively tell you before I even open up the envelope here is that Ed Wood wrote for the Encyclopedia of Sex series, as well as mainly the Encyclopedia of Sex series, one of the long-running Sociosex paperback series published under the larger umbrella of Pendulum Publishing, where he worked as a magazine staff writer. So he and fellow magazine staff writers, as well as some additional writers, would write paperbacks for publisher Bernie Bloom, and he put them out under a few different imprints. Pendulum, of course, was the initial launch pad for the West Coast publishing arm of Pendulum Publishing, which started out in Atlanta. Again, I went into all this at great length last week. So one thing I want to do today is try to make sure I've said it on the last couple of occasions, would be a little more concise and not abuse your time. I want to try to get to the point. So the book is the point, of course. So this particular book, what I know going into it before I even open up the package is that it's was filed for copyright under the name Leo Eaton. So it's written by Leo Eaton. The two different authors' titles on the cover. Well, let's get into it. Let's just cut right to the chase, right? Be careful with knives, folks. Oh my God. Sometimes people seal things up with so much, well, this is just a thick envelope that they folded over and sealed shut. So first off, before I even pull it out of the envelope, I have to say, I found this on Amazon. So I found this on Amazon a little bit ago and decided it was a decent price and I wanted it just to get another T.K. Peters book and also another Leo Eaton book. I have a number of the Sociosex paperbacks that Leo Eaton wrote mainly under the pseudonym Frank Leonard. As a matter of fact, as this one purports to be. Well, let me get to the price first off. So it was listed at, I believe I paid $16.95 for it, plus $4 or $5 shipping. So I paid in total a little over $20 for it. There was no picture and there was no information whatsoever in the listing. It was an Amazon listing from a private seller. No information whatsoever talking about the quality or condition of the book. So it's a little bit of a dice roll. This could be in rough shape or it could be in great shape or somewhere in between. I suspect it'll be somewhere in between. This is a guess, so we're going to find out here in mere seconds. But I thought that was a good price. I mentioned, I think, in last week's episode that, you pay somewhere in the range of 10, 15, upwards of $20 or so for T.K. Peters' title that's not written by Ed Wood. The books that were written by Ed, that are known to have been written by Ed, obviously will fetch much higher prices. I wrote some articles way back in the day, too, early on at Ed Wood Wednesdays at the Dead to Rights blog, and I'll link to one or two of those because I used to, pull up eBay listings or auction listings, other listings from online sellers, and kind of deconstruct some TK Peters titles, not dissimilar to what we did a little bit of last week and what I'm doing right here. But I used to do it with the express purpose of sort of debunking the claims that were made by these folks selling them that Ed Wood was the author. In matter of fact, this afternoon, I was just doing a little bit of picking around, and I came across a book not written by Ed Wood in the Sociosexual Paperback series. So it carries Dr. T.K. Peters' name on the title, as well as S.T. Lee. So I know who S.T. Lee is. If you watched last week's episode, if you watched it, or if you are going to watch it, I talk about a writer of one of the books I displayed last week. Terry Stacy was listed as one of the writers, along with T.K. Peters, of a title I displayed last week. So Terry Stacy and S.T. Lee, in fact, they're the same person, or they're actually two people. So I talked a little bit more about that last week. So you can refer back to that if you want to learn a little bit more about that particular subject. But the point here being, they made no claim in this listing of this Peters Lee book that Ed Wood had anything to do with it, but the price was discounted 15% down to like $90 and change. So the price listing was upwards of 106 or something, $106 and change. Which is don't pay that much for a T.K. Peters book that's not written by Ed Wood. I personally probably wouldn't even pay that much for one that was written by Ed Wood. Maybe it depends, I guess, on my financial circumstance at the time and how badly I might want the book. But no way, $106, $108, whatever that was. Then I also, picking around, noticed, I think it was on WorthPoint auction site that is a little bit, higher end, sort of, at least that's their imprimatur, that they're a little higher end than, say, like an eBay. So you could expect to pay more. You might expect to see higher pricing if you're going to be looking at listings on WorthPoint. So anyway, came across a listing of, obviously, a T.K. Peters book on WorthPoint, and it was one that carried Frank Leonard and T.K. Peters' name on the title. So I knew, of course, that's a Leo Eaton book. In the listing, though, it said, written by Ed Wood, aka T.K. Peters, aka Frank Leonard, as if those are aliases, or those are pseudonyms for Ed Wood. And that's a known quantity. Not so, not so. I'm not a member on WorthPoint, by the way, so you have to sign in to be able to see what the going price is. I'd be curious to know if anybody is a member of WorthPoint. Go ahead and pop that in the comments below the video. I'd be curious to see just how much they're trying to fetch for it, how much they think it's actually worth. But not an Ed Wood book, so be forewarned. If you do go there, don't get seduced into it. That being said, as I've been saying already in this video, and I mentioned numerous times in last week's video, there are elements within all of the Sociosex paperbacks in both the sex education clinical series / the Encyclopedia of Sex series, kind of the foundational series, as well as the Sexual Enlightenment series, which followed on that. In total, adding up to 50 or so paperbacks. I think actually a little more, as I've dug back into this subject recently. I looked into this subject 4 or 5 years back pretty deeply and started collecting some of the T.K. Peters books. And through the years have sort of, it's been on the, on the radar, so to speak, out of the corner of my eye. But having recently sort of started to dig back into it a little bit, I realized I think there's even more books with T.K. Peters' name on the title than that. And then that, additional to that, which has not been mentioned, I don't think, T.K. Peters' name appears on lots of articles in Pendulum magazines. So magazines that may carry not only Pendulum's imprint, but usually some of the companies that were sort of the doing business as, they were doing business as SECS Press, Sex Press, and they were doing business as EduSex. So it's in fact in many of the EduSex magazines where you're going to find articles that are credited to T.K. Peters. But we're talking about the paperback, so here we go. Right off the bat, I barely got it out of the envelope, and I recognize immediately this thing is in absolutely pristine condition. It's still got the plastic on it, so I'm not going to fight with the glare this week. I'll post an image of this along with the listing when the posted at the, it'll get posted at the Dead to Rights blog, a link to the YouTube video. It'll, of course, obviously show up on YouTube as well. So I wanted to mention, actually, I'm not interested in trying to, you know, garner 1 billion views or to get a monetized YouTube channel. I don't expect that. I realize what a niche topic this is, and I'm just happy to share some of my thoughts with some like-minded people. That's what it's all about. But I would like to know if you do enjoy it. So the like button, obviously below the video, you can hit that, or you can dislike it. By all means, dislike it if you don't like it. But if you do like it, subscribe, because you'll get a notification when the next video gets posted, even before it goes up on the Dead to Rights blog at Wood Wednesdays. I generally post these things, or have been posting these things, although this is only video number 5. Generally been posting them on Tuesday evenings. So if you want to get a jump on them, certainly you can do that. The first comments, again, beautiful. It's never been read. I don't know how long it's been in this plastic, but it's certainly never been read. It's just, you can tell that it possibly has never even been sort of opened up. Like nobody ever even fingered it open. Like it's probably, I've seen auctions of lots of books, not lots of books, but lots, like paperback, in a lot of books where they have a lot of sociosex paperbacks. And I've seen other listings online, other auctions of sociosex paperbacks, where they list them and they say, we have a whole case of these. We got these at, you know, they're in perfect condition still, and they were, you know, never even been on the shelf at a bookstore. These were these, so they're still, again, because it was such a burgeoning movement, and there was, they published this stuff in, you know, multitudes of copies. So there's still a lot of it floating around, obviously, all these years later, nearly half a century later. It is, in fact, half a century later, right? This book, I know from the catalog of copyright entries, was copywritten with the date April 15, 1971. So it's coming up on that. This is February, mid-February right now, as I sit here, mid-February 2021. So it's a half a century ago. This book is a half century old, and it is in absolutely perfect condition. So I'm very happy, as my guess was wrong, that it would be in sort of middling condition, perhaps. I wouldn't have even been surprised, because there was no photo, if it was in terrible condition with a broken spine, with, you know, a horribly scuffed cover with pages falling out. I wouldn't have been surprised. I've bought books before and they've shown up in that condition. But so I'm really happy. So now I'm especially happy that, you know, again, $16.95. That's in my range. Although I probably, if it was a little bit more expensive, would not have picked it up. So glad that I did. So now somebody's going to crack open the sucker for the first time. It makes me wonder also, as I take a look at this, just how many people may have actually read this book. Like how many copies would have gotten sold? I don't know the numbers within the market to that degree, but there's how many people would have purchased it, how many copies got sold, and then there's how many people actually read it, which I've speculated this in a couple of videos previously, that probably many people bought books, adult paperbacks or even sociosex paperbacks, never even read them. The sociosex paperbacks, though, have hardcore photographic images in them, which was one of their principal selling points, really, the differentiator that allowed them to fetch higher cover prices, generally, than just plain old textual adult paperbacks. But also, again, first time really in you know, the culture, human culture, where it became a mass commercial object, hardcore pornography. And one of the first ways that it made its way out into the marketplace, obviously there's films, but these adult paperbacks, magazines to a degree, also started publishing hardcore photographic imagery more regularly around the early 1970s. But really the sociosex paperbacks were a little bit pioneering on that score. So this one, interestingly enough, has a $4.95 price on the front cover. This is, for the record, this is the index number, and the index numbers of the Sex Press Sexual Encyclopedia of Sex / Sexual Education, Sex Education Clinical Series. Call it what you will, 36 or so volumes of it. They were sequential, starting at 100. well, not entirely sequential, because there are, I think Jim Ponalillo actually mentioned it in the initial video that he hasn't located a number 1 at that point. Sorry, my cat just jumped up in my lap, so I'm moving her out of the way. She wants to be in the video, apparently. Maybe someday I'll introduce you to my cat. So in any case, also I've seen in my previous research that there are titles that have maybe, I don't remember exactly, again, I have to get deeper back into this, but duplicate numbers or missing numbers later in the sequence as well. But this is SP number 115, and that's the index number. The volume number is something different. So it went out, like I said, upwards of 36 volumes. The volume number is volume 21. So the index number and the volume number are 2 different numbers. So this is more than halfway through the initial series, the Sex Education Clinical Series, aka better known as perhaps the Encyclopedia of Sex. And it says down the bottom here, Sexual Encyclopedia for Adults Only. Other ones earlier in the series would say the Encyclopedia of Sex, which is how it sort of garnered that moniker, at least to me. I think of it that way, as the Sex Education Series. But in matter of fact, it's technically the Sex Education Clinical Series. And guess what? SECS Press, Sex Education Clinical Series. I mentioned also last week that SECS also, they spun it off a few years later to the Sexual Education Correspondence School, which is pretty cool. So all right, so the cat obviously wants to make an appearance. This is Ivy. Say hello, Ivy. There you go. All right, you're a star, Ivy. She loves me. I think, I swear to God, to feel like if you have any pets, you know that you get a feeling sometimes that your pets perhaps can adore you more than any other human being on planet Earth. And that's how I feel she feels towards me. She absolutely, utterly, completely adores me. I don't know why, right? But other humans, I don't think, feel that deeply about me, but she follows me around the house. She'll constantly, if I lay down on the couch, if I go to bed, she's always there. She's always there. And she kind of watches over me. Sometimes I'll catch her out of the corner of my eye doing other things around the house, and I see her and she's just staring at me. She's very vigilant. So in any case, that's Ivy. So this is, of course, photo illustrated, huge selling point, photo illustrated, big bold print. That's again what folks were looking for. The cover design, as you can see, is just pretty plain, and the cover design became plainer and a little bit more sort of simpler, sort of graphic look for the covers in the later books in the series. The earlier books in the series looked a little bit less modern graphically, I want to say. At least the cover images, they were more just plain textual sort of thing, and there were different designs on the covers to a degree, but they all mimicked each other in having the volume number, the SECS Sex Press logo, the photo illustrated promise, the Sexual Encyclopedia for Adults Only language. So, and the same kinds of, there's a disclaimer on the back notice. This book for adults only is a frank discussion and review about sex. Its purpose is to inform and educate interested adults in the privacy of their own homes and to fulfill their own private interest. If you are not interested in such material, please do not purchase this book. So they warn you off. You don't want that. That's not what you're looking for. Now where are you when you are picking this book up and looking at the back cover? You're in an adult bookshop in circa 1971. You know exactly what is inside of this book without the disclaimer, and that's exactly what you want. So you're not going to put the book back. If anything, that's going to be more enticing. In larger letters in the middle of the back cover, the purpose of this book is to explain many of the problems that so many people find inhibit sexual relations. So that's what this one's all about. And then it says also on the back, this volume is one of a series of a continuing encyclopedia of sex. The complete series covers every aspect of sexual knowledge and information. Every aspect. And the cat, yes, she jumped back on my lap again. Every aspect of human sexuality is covered in it. Every aspect. That's pretty astonishing. So gonna be real careful here as I crack this sucker open again, because it is in such perfect condition. It's not, this spine is not dry or anything. It's beautiful. So looking at the front matter real quick, there's a little blurb taken right from the President's Commission on Obscenity and Pornography. And that's, of course, the little legal protection there. So this is outside the bounds of what the Presidential Commission found obscene or pornographic. This is, in fact, a medical book, and it's meant in the privacy of your own home for you and yours to, I guess, let me read it again, how they present it. Its purpose is to inform and educate interested adults in the privacy of their own homes. Okay, so it's to inform and educate. Inform and educate. SECS Press, Los Angeles, 5585 West Pico Boulevard. The address listed. That, of course, is the address of the Pendulum offices where Edward worked his day job for a number of years. I won't get into that. That's a big tangent, another subject for another day. There's lots of information if you go back through Edward Wednesdays, talked actually about Ed's work at the magazine office on a few occasions. Still always more can be said. So 1971, I already mentioned it was copywritten April of 1971. So that's actually very close to the end of the run for Frank Leonard. Leo Eaton is his real name, of course, but Frank Leonard, many of the books in the series were published by, come on, Ivy, please, I'll talk to you soon. Many of the books in the series were written and ascribed to both T.K. Peters and Frank Leonard. And Frank Leonard, of course, is really Leo Eaton, the author Leo Eaton, author / documentary filmmaker / really, brilliant creative guy who I talked a little bit again about last week. So I'll refer you back there to hear a little bit more about Leo Eaton. But Leo only worked at Pendulum in the MAG office along with Ed at 5585 West Pico for about 9 months during the spanning 1970, 1971. But he not only, day job like Ed writing for the magazines, but there was bonus money on the table if people wanted to write these paperbacks. And he did, and he scooped up a decent amount of that bonus money, writing a number of books in the larger, well, let's call them the T.K. Peters series to simplify it. So what I know, April 1971, there's only 2 more books with a copyright date that's either identical or later. One other book by Frank Leonard is copywritten on the same date, and then a later book from the series in May of 1971, and that's it. So this is very close to the end of the run for Leo Eaton's Sociosex Paperbacks in the quote-unquote T.K. Peters series. So, by Frank Leonard with Dr. T.K. Peters. Again, we're going to just look through quick. Okay, this is cool. This one, I didn't read this in any of the books I displayed last week, but in case you're wondering, was the T.K. Peters who worked on the Crypt of Civilization project at Oglethorpe University, was the newsreel photographer, newsreel cameraman from the beginning of the 20th century, active in the beginning of the 20th century, that T.K. Peters, the inventor, and then the Sociosex paperback writer. Could these all have been the same guy? Were they really the same guy? They were, but I've still heard people dispute it and say whoever they appropriated that name, T.K. Peters, for whatever reason, and that's a different guy. Now, there's a little biographical blurb in most of these books, and it goes like this, precisely like this. Dr. T.K. Peters, listed in Who's Who in America, has during 50 years of research into the lives and emotions of people, recorded the most intimate of details regarding sexual behavior. His notable career covers marriage counseling, in which he aided the troubled in solving their sexual obsessions, and as an educator to students of biology, education, and psychology in New York and at Oglethorpe University in Atlanta, Georgia. So that says a lot. That's a great little blurb in terms of giving up a lot of details that otherwise may not be well known. Yes, the Who's Who, you can, I think at the Internet Archive, go to archive.org and you can find old Who's Who listings, and you will in fact find Dr. Peters' Who's Who listing if you look. And what's great about this, 50 years of research into the lives and emotions of people. So really takes us back. I think I speculated last week that maybe the beginnings of what ultimately became these books, the seed was when he was sort of working as a documentary film maker in what I think I called ethnography, for lack of a better term. But I was interested in the cultures, even the sexual customs and norms of far-flung tribes from all around the world. And so that's connects that dot. That's probably where I got the idea. I didn't surmise it just for the hell of it. But also, this says his notable career covers marriage counseling, in which he aided the troubled in solving their sexual obsessions. So a marriage counselor. So in his work as a marriage counselor, presumably, is where he would have compiled a lot of the material that ultimately became his comprehensive manual related to all aspects of human sexuality, which became the basis for all of the T.K. Peters books, whether written by him or not. They at least continued to slap his name on the title. Table of contents, we've got common sex problems, premature ejaculation, male impotence, nymphomania and satyriasis. I'm not reading all of these things. Honeymoon problems, all right, homosexuality and marriage. So we've got a lot of topics that are all related to intimate sexual problems. So cool, sounds good to me. Frank Leonard, there's a nice preface by Frank Leonard, and it's 2 full pages. Gonna not read it. He talks a little bit clearly as I glance at this about the President's Commission on Pornography. The opening, in spite of the so-called sexual revolution, the majority of people in America today know very little about the psychology of sex. Hangover from Puritanism is the next line. So again, you could see that all very consistent little bundle here of themes and ideas around a study of intimate sexual problems. So the interesting, Frank Leonard, Los Angeles, 1970. So it didn't get copywritten until April 15th, 1971. But Frank signs his preface 1970. So again, it gives me a little clue. What was the sort of lag time in between somebody finishing up a manuscript and it actually making its way to market? You have to think it's a fairly fast turnover time. Again, not like these books were going to go through some massive editorial function with rewrites and things of that nature. So I can't show you the photos, obviously, here on YouTube, but first photo, I'll read you the first photo caption, and it is a man and a woman having intercourse. Again, this is hardcore pornography. Some men have difficulty maintaining an erection during coitus. All right, fair statement. I think it's a fair statement. Next one, I'm not going to read all these. I will, but not now. But partly, again, I'll look at the text after I look at a few more of the captions. The captions are actually more interesting to me because I feel pretty strongly that there's a high degree of likelihood that Ed may have written photo captions for books that in the T.K. Peters series that he himself didn't write. He may have not have written the book. Again, he wrote a chunk, upwards of perhaps as much as 30% or so of the overall series. But I think he wrote the captions across many of them. Or again, others could have written it. I think a line like that initial caption could have just come right out of a medical textbook on human sexuality, right? Some men have difficulty maintaining an erection during coitus. Again, during coitus, an erection, you got to make it sound very clinical, right? Again, dancing around obscenity laws or making sure that they're going to remain, free of the shadow of potentially it being considered obscene or pornographic, and thereby getting people in some kind of hot water, the publishers. The next photo caption, the squeeze technique can help cure premature ejaculation. The photo is not of, I'll just say that what the photo isn't rather than what it is, but it's not of the quote unquote squeeze technique. So the squeeze technique can help cure premature ejaculation. Out of context, I'm not quite sure, what the squeeze technique exactly is. I think I know, but again, decontextualized, it doesn't tell you a whole hell of a lot. Well, does this refer back to the text, right? Do these photos follow along with the text, and do these photo captions refer back to at that rough point in time within the book? As in a traditional book, the photos sort of amplify and extend aspects of the text. Not always in these cases. Next one, penis length has little to do with the ability to satisfy a woman. You've heard that before, right? It's not the size, but what a guy does with it. You will hear conversely that size does matter. So you'll hear both sides of the story. This avers that penis length has little to do with the ability to satisfy a woman. So these are actually, again, I'll pretty much stop there. We get color photo, a chunk of color photos, obvious, 2 chunks of color photos along the way, which is cool. Very, I mean, it's jumping right off the page at me how clinical this all sounds. There must be complete trust and understanding between both partners for sex to be successful. Sounds reasonable. Complete trust? I don't know though. Well, success, I guess that begs the question, what do you consider successful, right? Both the man and the woman must work together to cure impotence, to cure it, right? They'll work together to find a cure. I'll stop there. But again, just to give you chapter 7, Honeymoon Problems. In the high-speed 20th century world that we live in, premarital sex is taken so much for granted that many people are inclined to overlook the problems that can occur on the wedding night and during the honeymoon. The sexual revolution is not offered everyone the same way, and many young couples are made up of at least one of the partners still being a virgin on their marriage. For them, and even for more sexually experienced couples, the success of the marriage may well depend on the success of the wedding night. That's written in very straightforward language, that particular piece. Again, glancing through it real quickly, I saw more clinical language jumping out at me. And what I think I know is that texts written by Dr. Peters, older man of an earlier generation, he would have been, well, I don't know, 70 years or so older, give or take, 65 years older than Frank Leonard / Leo Eaton. This sounds to me like it probably was written by Leo Eaton, who, and I know he did often write the texts in the T.K. Peters series himself, kind of from ground up. Maybe he's basing it on material within the actual Comprehensive Manual of Human Sexuality that Dr. Peters wrote, but he's not just copying and pasting it entirely. Again, there's sections here where it looks like there's more clinical language jumping out at me. But what I think I know is that Dr. Peters' writing style, I use the word Victorian for, again, lack of a better term. It just has a sound to it that is from a bygone age. That this sounds very contemporary, very plain contemporary language. So more photographs in color as I get a little deeper into it, a second block of photos in color. This really is written like it's a how-to manual, how to obviously garner greater satisfaction and intimacy in your sex life. Many young girls come to the marriage bed unsure of their reactions to intercourse. So the captions here don't strike me at all. As a matter of fact, like they have that Ed ring to it, that kind of his sort of oddness and weird syntax, or even any of the sort of keywords that I would some of which I would recognize as being common keywords that Ed may have employed. And then just the overall, the weird discursive elliptical sort of thinking. So you could see photo captions. I read some in books from last week, which clearly are a lot weirder than what I'm looking at right here. So this isn't really all that weird. So this looks like, by and large, I'll make a concluding statement here in just a second. So this is a concluding statement. This is by and large, this is pretty much, with the exception of the hardcore photographic imagery, pretty straightforward medical / scientific / sociosexual book. Sounds like it, it's what it purports to be, and it is, of course, fully illustrated, which again was the selling point. But so it looks like a pretty serious, sober work. So definitely glad I picked it up, glad to get it in perfect condition. The last photo caption for the record, again, there's probably this is 190 pages, so there's probably roughly 90, possibly with the 4 or so pages of color photographs, 8 or so in total. Again, there'd be like 4 pages of color photos at a couple points along the way in the book. Probably somewhere in the realm of about 100 photographs in this book, I would say. The very last photo caption: most women like to be erotically stimulated during coitus. Again, this is really straightforward stuff and sensible. It's not bizarre, right, at all. There is a bibliography, and you've got Kraft Ebing, you've got Kinsey, you've got Havelock Ellis, you've got, a lot of the usual suspects who wrote uh, about human sexuality, and really, in a way, they were writing books like this without the hardcore photographic images, and they were writing them for a serious-minded audience. Of course, for people reading them even back in the day, because it was just a glimpse into aspects of human sexuality and a sort of frank look at it that was beyond what we had seen before, of course. But the sort of next generation of the Kinseys and the folks like Havelock Ellis, the next generation gets us to this with hardcore photographic images. Nonfiction books that are cited include Mortimer Adler, Dr. Frank S. Caprio, whose name you'll see turn up a lot. Quotes, this purports, again, I'll have to go through the whole book to find out if all these things are actually sourced in the book. They may or may not be. I've seen bibliographies in these books before where they're just sort of sham bibliographies, again, to give the superficial appearance that it's a serious book. That's sourced from some very serious books. So this even talks about, citing Will Durant, who wrote about, world religion, and Freud, etc., and some others, names that, including T.H. Van de Velde, who wrote The Ideal Marriage way back in the 1930s, which became, incidentally, Man and Wife, the film Man and Wife, released in 1969, one of the first films to have at least a snippet of hardcore imagery in it. Again, there's only a few snippets, but again, even film at the time, it's a white coater, obviously. The doctor is going to explain aspects of human sexuality, and then we're going to see people actually have sex. So the films, the books, again, it was all just sort of exploding into the world all at once. Pornography, for, again, lack of a better term, as a all-enveloping term. The Sex Education Clinical Series, Photo Illustrated Studies of the Continuing Encyclopedia of Sex. So this gives a whole list of titles. So these would be a study of, and then it lists some titles we looked at. We looked at a copy last week of Sex Foods and Sex Aids. We looked at, here's listed also, Orgies and Toilism, or Orgies and Troilism. Some others, books on, some I have, others, a few of these I don't have, but Scandinavian sex habits, black sex, erogenous zones, orality, the lesbian, the homosexual, and the bisexual. So again, they cover pretty much every conceivable aspect of human sexuality in these related T.K. Peters series. If you can't get them from your dealer, you can write directly to Box 900 at 5585 West Pico Boulevard. You can write directly to Sex Press if your dealer does not carry these titles. So that was a quick dive just into one book. Again, that was all I wanted to really accomplish here today, and keep it a little bit tighter. Just kind of continue to massage the idea of the T.K. Peters series for me personally, as well as share a little bit more about it. And I hope ultimately the ultimate end game for me anyway would be a more definitive understanding of who wrote what, a more definitive sort of indexing and cataloging of the whole entire series. So I'm kind of picking the ball up again. I dropped the ball a few years back and picking it back up recently, and hopefully I'll continue to find out more. And when I do, I'll certainly share it here at the Ed Wood Summit podcast. So I want to thank you all for joining me really quickly today. I did want to mention one last thing that I neglected to mention about Dr. Peters. I was subsequently doing a little bit more reading about Dr. Peters, and this was one little nugget, which I thought, in light of how things are politicized in today's world, he he was hired on as a, this is when he was in Atlanta before he left to move to Los Angeles. He was hired on, I found an article that said he was hired on, come on, he was hired on by an organization as a curator to curate a collection of original Confederate flags. Kind of interesting. Of course, he was a well-respected individual. That would be something that in today's world, well, I guess if it was curation, I don't know. We won't know because, again, that was then. This is now. And until we come back, I hope you guys really have a good week. A couple of upcoming topics. We still have outstanding What's After, the review of Ed's book, What's After, Yes, a Genuine Ed Wood book. So I'll get Joe Blevins back on with me because we plan to review that together as we did with the initial book of the pair, What's the Difference, a few weeks back. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. If you haven't seen any of the previous videos and you enjoyed this one, I think you'll enjoy the previous video. So please do check them out. And as always, I hope this short little stint of time that we spent together was of some benefit and enjoyment to you. And thanks.